Hi everybody, good to see you all today. If you remember, I told you that Wednesdays, hi Molly, that Wednesdays would be kind of like our ladies' day. So we would be talking about a woman from the Bible, and I've got a really good one today. We are going to talk about a queen in the Bible, and no, not Jezebel. We've already covered her. Now she will come up a little bit in our talk today, but we're not going to talk about her so much today. And this is a very interesting topic. There's a lot to be learned, even though not a ton is told about the woman that we are going to cover today. So we're going to mainly be in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings. Okay, if you want to follow along. So after the reign of King David and his son, King Solomon, Israel, as we know it in the Bible, is separated into two kingdoms. We have a northern kingdom and we have a southern kingdom. And the northern kingdom is known as the kingdom of Israel. And the southern kingdom is known as the kingdom of Judah. So we have Israel as a country, but it's separated, and we have north and south, Israel and Judah. That's really important to remember for our study. All of these people, the kings and their sons and captains and nephews and all that, from the different kingdoms, the north and south, can get kind of mixed up if we're not careful in our reading. So I will try not to delve too deep into that particular aspect of our story. But it is important to know that there are two different kingdoms going on here for our lesson today. So think back to the story I talked to you a few weeks ago about Ahab and Jezebel. Remember, Ahab and Jezebel were a married couple, king and queen, and super wicked. He wanted that guy's vineyard and he wouldn't sell it, and so Jezebel got it. Anyway, so this story kind of takes place shortly, kind of in all that, and then a little bit after that. So we'll try not to get too mixed up here. So remember, Jezebel was a super wicked queen. She was the daughter of a satanic high priest of the Zidonians. So she was a foreign wife that married Ahab so that those two countries could kind of have a treaty. That's how things worked. So the Zidonians, their religion was super into demon worship and child sacrifice and things like that. So she brought all of that with her into her marriage into the country pretty heavily. I mean, they had already kind of been doing a little bit of that, but she brought in like fresh wave, really a zealous aspect of it, which means like they were super into it. Okay, so Ahab and Jezebel, they have kids, they have families. Often, if you remember, I talked to you about this, like when we were talking about Esther, often kings, they had children with their main wife, okay? But they also had children with their concubines, and these children are still considered royal bloodline, even though they're not always in the direct line of succession. They're still considered the king's kids, just not worthy of a crown necessarily should the king die. Eventually maybe they could become, but the natural succession is like parents and kids. Hi Harper. Okay, so that's where we're at in the story. So Ahab either has a daughter or he had a sister. Let me get this off of my screen. Every day at like 5:03 that comes on. Ahab either has a daughter with Jezebel or he has a sister from his dad. And her name was Athalia. And she is either, like I said, a sister-in-law or a stepdaughter to Queen Jezebel. All right, so they were kind of related. Before we delve further into Athalia's story, I want to draw your attention to a few things. why was Israel divided in the first place? It wasn't under David and it wasn't under Solomon. Why was Israel ripped into two pieces? There's a very obvious answer, and I'm going to read you a few verses out of 1 Kings chapter 11. This is very important, so please either follow along with me or listen carefully. But King Solomon loved many strange women, together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, which is where Jezebel was from, and the Hittites. Of the nations concerning which the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Ye shall not go into them, neither shall they come into you, for surely they will turn away your heart after their gods. Solomon clave unto these women in love. And he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines. And his wives turned away his heart from the Lord, okay? And it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after their gods, and his heart was not perfect with the Lord his God, as was the heart of David his father. So sad. Solomon had such promise, right? All that wealth and wisdom. And look what happened when he got in with people that didn't believe in the Lord, unbelievers. For Solomon went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. So those are false gods that people would sacrifice their children to. So Solomon turned out to be just as bad as like all these idolatrous people, sacrificing babies. I mean, to go from loving the Lord with all your heart to that's crazy. And Solomon did evil in the sight of the Lord and went not fully after the Lord, as did David his father. Then, it gets worse, then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, more baby worshiping things or baby sacrificing things, and for Molech, which is a horrible demonic god, the abomination of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrifice to their gods. And the Lord was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from the Lord of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice, and he commanded him concerning this thing that he should not go after other gods, but he kept not that which the Lord commanded. So the Lord said to Solomon, Because you have done these things, and you have not kept my covenant and my statutes which I've commanded thee, I will surely rend the kingdom from thee, and will give it to thy servant. So, why was the kingdom divided? Because of idolatry. Guys, God hates idolatry. He will always punish it. Always. And it's like the Israelites just did not get it. I guess we're no better, okay? We're the same way. We put things before the Lord all the time, don't we? We may not bow down to little statues and sacrifice our children to them, but putting anything before the Lord is sin. It's idolatry, and God hates it. God hates it so much. So the northern and the southern kingdom became reality. Israel was divided. Guys, God associates idolatry with Satanism. I know I have said it before, but God couples idolatry, worshiping anything, putting anything before him, with the occult. It goes hand in hand to the Lord. Please remember that. It's so important. Okay, so fast forward many years after the whole Solomon thing. We have Israel, the north, and Judah, the south. They were split. All the kings from both throughout all the years, 40 years here, 30 years here, 10 years here, they all reign different times, and they die, and their sons take over. There was good kings and there was evil kings, mostly evil, sadly. Here's a hint. all of the northern kings were all evil. None of them were ever good, ever. Judah, they were mostly evil, but there was a couple that were good kings. Okay, so north, all bad. South, mostly bad. So we have the northern and the southern kingdom. As was typical, someone from the north married someone from the south, and there was a treaty that happened. So they agreed to quit fighting amongst themselves. And Athalia, who was Ahab's relative, the northern kingdom, married a guy, the king, from the southern kingdom. So there was a treaty. So that's how they kind of cemented friendships back then. Someone gave their daughter to marry, and so they were buddies, I guess. Anyway, so the kings of Israel and Judah are now pals, I guess you could say. And the king of Israel becomes ill. He falls sick. And his buddy, the pal from Judah, the king of Judah, comes to visit him. They're probably related. I mean, they're probably cousins of some sort. Anyway, during this little visit is when Jezebel takes a header through a palace window. Okay, so they push her out. It's during this time when there's this little meeting. That's when the one guy has her pushed out. And the dogs ate her. Okay, remember that? Jezebel was pushed out of a window and died, and the dogs ate her. The Bible's not boring, guys. Okay, the guy who had Jezebel killed, he keeps going. Okay, he doesn't just stop with her. He's going to kill all of the evil kings over in the northern kingdom. His name is Jehu. And Jehu comes in and he's like, I'm going to wipe out all these evil people, all these idol-worshiping evil people. So he finds out that these two kings, had a play date. They got together to visit. And he goes to where they're at. And they see him coming. And so they assemble their armies to meet Jehu's armies, the guy who's going to come in and kill them all. And they go out to meet him, and they're like, what's up, okay? What's going on? Why are you coming out here to, fight with us? And Jehu says to them, you're evil, and you're all going to die. And he kills all of them, okay? He kills them. He kills their sons. He kills them. He goes into the city, and Ahab has 70 sons. Okay, obviously not from the same wife. Remember, he had concubines. All these kings did. So all these concubines have kids from the king. So he kills Ahab's 70 sons. Ahab, is dead by this time. Jehu kills not only their sons, but he kills all of their family members, priests. He kills all the nephews and uncles and everyone. Okay, he does the same thing with the king from Judah. So the king from Israel and the king from Judah, Jehu comes in and he wipes out all of them. All of them. Not just, they're kids. Everybody who has these guys' DNA dies. So then he keeps going, okay? He goes to the capital city, which is in Samaria, and he calls an assembly. And he tells everyone there that he loves Baal, who is a false god. And he invites all the Baal worshipers and everybody who loves Baal to come to this assembly, like church. Come to this church, and we're going to all worship Baal together. It's a Baal love fest. So he goes in, he gives all these Baal worship people special clothes and things that they use to worship their gods. Who knows what all that was? It was probably horrible. Anyway, so he goes and he gets all these people together, and he's like, we're all going to worship Baal together, and we're going to have a grand old time. So this is what Jehu, this is the guy who's assembling all these people. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, weren't you just telling us that he didn't like the devil worshiping people? Jehu was really kind of devious. Okay, so this is what happens in 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 21. He says, you find it here. And Jehu sent through all Israel, and all the worshipers of Baal came. And So there was not a man left that did not come. Every single person in Israel who liked the false god Baal came. Not one didn't come. And they came into the house of Baal, which is like a false temple, idol worshiping temple. And the house of Baal was full from one end of one end to the other. No room in the house. It was a full house of all these Baal, horrible demon worshiping people. So Jehu tells his guards, he says, I want you to go into there, into the little temple, the Baal temple, and I want you to make sure it's only Baal people in there. Make sure. And then I want you to close the door. And then he tells the guards that were outside, if any of those Baal worshiping guys comes out and they get away, you're going to die. And they're like, okay. So he says, now, I want you to go inside and I want you to kill them all. I mean, that's a lot of people. A lot. You got to think, it was an idolatrous area, and every single false idol worshiping person was in this temple. And Jehu had them all massacred. Killed them all. Got them, tricked them all into assembling at the same place, and then killed them. So they did. They killed all the priests, all the Baal followers. They broke the Baal statues in all of Israel. Oddly, at the end of this little story, and we're going to get to Athalia, the bad lady, so hang on with me. Oddly, Jehu was not a follower of God, and he allowed Baal worship to continue elsewhere in the land, just not in Israel. You know, he's still not considered a righteous king. He was a northern king, and he was considered evil and wicked. So, how does Athalia come into all of this? Remember, she was related to Ahab, the king of the north, and was the mother of the southern king that had just gotten killed. When Athalia sees that her son is killed by King Jehu, she's crazy. She begins to go throughout the palace and throughout the kingdom, and she kills every single person who had her son's DNA. Like her grandkids, her son's children, their children, so her grandchildren, nieces, nephews, everybody. It's a power grab, okay? So she kills anybody who ever has a chance to claim her son's crown, and she takes over as queen. She kills everybody in the family and takes over. But the dead king's sister, a woman named Jehosheba, she saw what was happening. I think this is, might have even been her daughter. I don't know. She saw what was happening, and she took the dead king's youngest son. He was 1 year old at the time. His name was Joash. She took him out of the palace, and she took him to the temple, God's temple. And she hid him, and she hid his nurse, because he's only 1 year old. She hid him in that temple. The priest took the boy in, and he lived at the temple of God in hiding for 6 years. He was only 1 year old. So the high priest raised Joash kind of as his own son for 6 years. And Athalia reigned 6 years over Judah during this time. So after he was 6 years old, the little boy, Joash, is now 7. Okay, after 6 years, he's 7 years old. And he'd been in hiding in the temple for 6 years without even any of his family. Okay, that nurse was the only one there. And I guess the high priest decided that it was now time to crown him as king, a 7-year-old. Man, Athalia must have been a really terrible ruler for them to be so desperate to get a 7-year-old on the throne. But anyway, so this is what the high priest does. The high priest, whose name is Jehoiada, he secretly calls for all the captains of the guard and all of the elders of Judah to come to the temple. And he has a plan. He shows them this little boy, Joash, and tells them who he is. This is your rightful king. This is the rightful heir to the throne. And what they do is they band around him and close the doors, and they crown him king. They anoint him and they crown him the new king of Judah. And everybody cheers and claps. And the noise was so loud that the queen heard it. And she comes to see what's going on. So basically, they're taking back the palace, okay? They're taking back the throne for God, for Judah, for the rightful heir. And Jehoiada told the guards to take weapons, King David's weapons from the temple, and to kill anybody who tried to stop them. Okay, it's like a coup, right? So Athalia enters and sees Joash standing up by the altar and with a crown on his head, and they're all proclaiming him king. She knows what's going on, and she screams, she calls them all traitors and accuses them all of treason. So the high priest gives an order to remove her from the temple, kick her out of the temple, physically take her out into the street, and they kill her. And they killed everyone who liked her. So the wicked queen Athalia is killed out in the street, and all of her followers are killed with her. Joash was a good king who did the right thing by the Lord as he grew up all of the days of Jehoiada the high priest. Sadly, when Jehoiada passed away, King Joash turned and followed after the evil kings before him, which is a very sad story. But what I want to talk to you about today is, first of all, what role does God have in your daily life? What role does he have in your daily life? Is anything in your life over the Lord? Do you have something in your life, whether it be a person, whether it be an object, a hobby, things you like to do? Is there anything in your life that you place over the Lord in importance? God hates idolatry. He hates it so much. And he wants us to love him. He wants us to put him first. He's very clear about that in his scripture. The other thing I want to talk to you about, and then we'll be finished, is something that we call generational sin. And what is generational sin? Guys, sometimes in families, things go on and things happen. And it's things that can get a foothold, a stronghold in your family's life that can pass down to you for whatever reason. I know preacher at our church says this, and in fact he said it Sunday. He said, parents, what you do in moderation, I think he was talking about drinking, what you do in moderation or a little bit, your children are likely to do in excess. So if I am to do a little bit of social drinking just every now and then, maybe wine for dinner or something, it's a poor testimony to our kids, because a lot of times what we do just occasionally, our children take it a step further and they do it in excess. And that's what I'm trying to get across to you today. Hi, Carly. I'm trying to say Omri, who was Ahab's dad, was evil and idolatrous. Ahab was even worse, the Bible says. Even worse. And look at all of the kings who came after. They got progressively more evil and more evil. And in order to be successful parents, we need to live godly lives for our children, for our friends, for our spouses. If we've got issues in our family, maybe a particular stronghold has taken root in your family. Guys, when you become old enough to move out and be on your own and raise your own families, it's so important to be a step above how you were raised. If you were raised in a less than godly home, or even in a home where people struggled with things. Things have a way of taking root in a family if it's not taken care of and gotten rid of. I beg you to do that today. I beg you to look at your parents, your grandparents, and in respect and in love, examine how you were raised and how they lived their lives, and strive to do even better. strive to draw even closer to the Lord than even your godly parents and grandparents did, if you were lucky enough to have godly parents and godly grandparents. Strive to do even more for the Lord. Strive to live an even more godly life, because the Bible is always true. And if sin is not dealt with and conquered and taken hold of in your life, it very easily can turn to be a vice in your life, and something that you struggle with, and something that your children will struggle with too, as they see it in your life. So please do that. Please pray about that, and honestly examine the life that your families are leading, and resolve to build an even godlier legacy than that. The purpose is to raise godly children in a sadly ungodly world. So strive your hardest to follow the Lord. Make talking to Him and drawing closer to Him a daily goal. We will have another story tomorrow. If you have a request, I'm always open to taking those and teaching something that someone has an interest in the Bible. So get with me, text me, message me something. Don't forget, tonight we have a Zoom meeting for the youth group, so tune into that. Be sure you're not late, and we'll see you then. I love you all.